Welcome to the Developing Life podcast. Today, we are honored to have with us Rick Griffith, a distinguished graphic designer, typographer, and cultural instigator whose work spans multiple disciplines over decades. Originally from Southeast London and now a dynamic force in Denver's creative scene, Rick has consistently challenged the boundaries of design and print. Through his consultancy and print shop, Matter, he blends typography with elements of language, history, politics, science, and music, reflecting his deep roots in punk rock. Rick's passion and commitment to social impact and education has led him to launch initiatives such as the Black Astronaut Research Project and to serve as a guiding force in various educational and cultural institutions with his ongoing work in teaching and public speaking. His design work has been recognized in numerous exhibitions and has found homes in prestigious collections across the globe, a reflection of his significant contributions to contemporary design and thought. With our host, Heather Crank, Rick will share insights from his vibrant career of art and activism, discussing how his commitment to creativity and social change has profoundly influenced the field of design and beyond.
Thank you, True. Welcome, Rick.
Hi.
I'm so thrilled to have you here. I first found out about you when I lived in Denver, and then I had the pleasure of hanging out with you at Bend Design, where you gave one of the most amazing presentations I think I've ever seen. It was phenomenal.
Well, thanks. I think I was well rehearsed, and so therefore it'll turn out okay.
Got consistency.
Right.
It's good.
Something like that.
So what I'd like to do is I'd like to start at the beginning. You were born in the UK and then you immigrated to the United States. And I'm really curious how the different locations affected you and what that process was like.
Yeah, I think it's not really just locations. It's like that time in your life when you develop a certain attitude towards things. So I became a teenager in Southeast London, and then I finished my teenage years in Fairfax County, Virginia. And, if you say that you lived in London in the 70s, and then you lived in DC's suburbs in the 80s, and then New York in the 90s,
yes,
then you sort of have this one thread that follows you along, which is like sort of punk rock music, and some of the attitudes that come with that are somewhat ingrained in you. And in the UK, punk music is kind of it's a type of pop music that is tolerated in the UK. Whereas in America, punk music is only punk music as long as it's completely unheard of and underground. When it comes above ground, it disqualifies itself as punk music. And I think that's a interesting dimension shift for me. Like I became something automatically subversive because of my music tastes, and so I leaned into that.
So how did you get involved with the punk scene? Like, when did you first discover that?
Boy, I guess it was high school. I mean, my family completely imploded. So
Oh, wow.
when you have a kind of disruptive family life, you reach into that group of kids in school that also have this sort of, this acrimony in their parent relationships and stuff. And so punks find themselves, punks find each other. If you've been rejected by XYZ, sort of there's a physical and an emotional language to that.
So one thing I'm always really curious about is with the punk scene, there's a lot of expression of anger and of being the other. But my experience of you is someone who is so heart-centered. How do you manage a tension between being someone who's so community oriented, so full of compassion, and then involved in the scene that has so much intensity?
Yeah, I mean, I that's a good question. I think that the the kinds of violence that were performed against punk people in the 1980s in the suburbs of America, it's reasonably well documented. Like you get called a faggot, or you get
Mm-hmm.
called, some name that there's these separate groups like jocks and burnouts, hippies and punks and such, and it's all fairly well played out in John Hughes movies and and in some independent films. But I think that the experience I had was one of being really with a chosen family and a chosen community,
Mm-hmm.
and it continued to feel that way in New York City. I made some friends for life there too.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that, like, you can know this intensity in an angry format.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if you're a creative person, you might figure out that, like, you can burn out from that fairly
Mm-hmm.
quickly. And so I think that while it's always available. I mean, even today, 2025, like, being pissed off about something's pretty much available.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that what's most important is to figure out how people will join together and figure out how to help each other. It's always
Mm-hmm.
been a part of DC's punk scene,
Mm-hmm.
Positive Force, and a number of different sort of groups of people that were, sort of this PMA, this positive mental attitude stuff. It's not really just sort of toxic, hyper masculine positivity. It's actually just like helping people find themselves and feel cared for, um and know that, like, the superficial things that people reject about us in the 80s, or rejected about us in the 80s, weren't really important things, that we actually were made of much more rich and dimensional sort of thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and that
Mm-hmm.
so I think you just get over it. I mean, some people are not ever not angry, and I understand that that's a real experience too. And there's a lot to be angry about, but I think I found my way through it into some other experiences, and so I stick with it. And I'm also a dad, like
Mm-hmm.
I've become so many other things besides, or on top of, that punk identity, that, like,
Mm-hmm.
punk rock dad is just fine too. Lots of love in that, you
I
know.
love that. I love that. Okay, so you've moved and you're moving around all over the place. You're in the punk scene. How do you end up in design? Like, where do you pick that up?
Record stores. I worked in a record store
Oh.
in Fairfax County when I was a kiddo, and one day I um, I happened to have dropped a tab of acid, and my boss went and picked up a couple of really special records from home, and then brought them into work, and um, I just looked at this cover, and I was like, I cannot. I don't even know what they call the person that makes album covers for a living, but I think I want to be one,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was the beginning of my journey. And, like, I think 16 years old is a perfectly good time to sort of discover that. And so I sort of found that, and then pointed and carried on.
So what brought you? Okay, so let me back up. So you're looking at record design, you're thinking about, I want to do this for a living. And then you found Rick Griffith design. So talk to me about how you move from Rick Griffith design into Denver and then into Matter.
Well, I don't suppose that I decided I wanted to be a designer, and so I applied to go to college at the Cooper Union. I
Mm,
didn't get in. I moved to New
wow.
York anyway. I was the graveyard shift worker at the local Kinko's of Georgetown University. And then I got a transfer to go to the Kinko's of Columbia University, where I became instantly the graveyard shift manager.
Oh, wow.
Um, and then at that point in time, I had already sort of done some, in quotes, graphic exercises or punk flyers
Hmm.
or sort of funny sort of flyer graffiti projects. Just sort of whatever. I dipped my toe in to a bunch of things, and then from there, I feel like what happened was I just stuck with it. And New York City is an incredible place to get an education about design.
Hmm.
I took I took a printmaking course at Parsons and New School.
Hmm.
I took a truth functional symbolic logic introduction to philosophy course at the Eugene Lang School, which is also part of the New School. Then I took a Exacto blade and ruling pen class at the Cooper at nighttime at the Cooper Union,
Hmm. Hmm.
and the rest of the time I just worked and got books out of the Strand's basement and read everything I could find on graphic design. I have had a MoMA membership since I was, I think, 18 or
Hmm.
19 years old. I've had a constant MoMA membership, or thereabouts. But that whole place, the atmosphere called New York, is the teacher,
Hmm.
and it still teaches me plenty about design,
Hmm.
and I love that city so much. Yeah. So I taught myself design in roughly 5 or 6 years. Then um and then I start teaching people how to do software. Like,
Hmm.
so I was like working in copy shops like Kinko's, and then I traveled for a little bit with a punk band. Came back and started teaching people how to use like PageMaker version 1.0 and all this freehand and all this software that was in the atmosphere. Um, and it was really silly, like all this early Macintosh software. I was a system operator. I was like I just knew my way around that stuff,
Hmm.
and I got plenty of work in New York City doing it.
Hmm.
And then I pulled back from the production side and tried my hand at becoming a designer. Eventually, like doing my own work and finding my own clients and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
that's where I found some support from a couple of key people. Um, Fred Gates, Peter Seidler, a couple of just like designers that were kind to me, gave me a shot.
Hmm.
Um, and then and then I fell in love and then followed a girl to Colorado.
Oh, so that's how you ended up in Colorado.
Yeah, yeah, for
Wow.
sure. Yeah.
Okay, so you land in Colorado and you begin to think you could do your own thing. And so you start, is that where you start Rick Griffith Design?
It started a little bit before that, but I was looking for a job out here. No one was hiring me.
Hmm.
So that forced me to hang out my own shingle because they hadn't met
Hmm.
a black graphic designer out here yet in the community out here. And so, you know,
Yes. Yes. I believe you were the first black bookstore in Colorado. Do I have that right?
no, no, there were black bookstores here when I was raising my kids. They just had closed down.
Oh.
So when Matter became also a bookstore,
Uh-huh.
it became part of a tradition, I suppose, of one black owned bookstore at a time out here. But certainly, we're sort of it right now, but who knows? And um, what's fun about it is that we have this cultural justice lens to our bookstore, of course, but we also have design and art as a pretty big focus. So we enjoy a lot of course, we enjoy being part of both communities, you know.
Mhm.
So
So,
that's really it.
for people who are listening and don't know what matter is, can you explain what matter is and what function it serves in the Denver community?
Yeah, it's a design studio that in 1999 was founded with its own printing presses. Like I already owned a couple of presses when I started Matter,
Hmm.
and that the printing presses and the letterpress and the silk screening and all that stuff sort of just happens very naturally here. We're a production oriented place. And then when we moved into this building that had a storefront attached to it, we were like making our own stationery. So we decided that we wanted to have a store,
Hmm.
which is easy until you try and staff a store with people who are just like going up and down stairs or trying to get work done and things like that. But basically, it turned into a bookstore. It turned into something much more significant over the years. But it's been 25 years since Matter started, and it's constantly changing formats and personnel and all these interesting ways of being in the world. Um, and it's responding to like whatever's available, or it's responding to my interests, or it's responding to my partner's interests, and so on and so forth. So yeah.
So, how do you decide what type of books that you stock in Matter? And um, I remember once you said that you often, when people come in and will recommend a book for your store, and you immediately will get it. So, I'd like to hear about the process.
Well, the first part of the process is pretty easy. When people ask us if they want us to carry their book,
Hmm.
we will put it into a book club that we have that just simply reviews manuscripts and rates them according to a rubric that we've set out, which is, is this book right for our community? Who in our community would care about this? Is it well written, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
And that's called the Beta Club, Matter Beta. And but if it's a book that I already know about or that my partner has already discovered through various publisher marketing and stuff like
Hmm.
that,
Hmm.
then we'll jump in front of that and just simply get things that we enjoy, or we'll find things that we really care about and make sure that we have them on the shelves, topics and or titles and or authors. So you know
Hmm.
it could just be a book that's by a very dear talented friend, and we'd put it on the shelf, and then we would train the people that work in the bookstore to sell it or to teach people about it, and then the customers will do what the customers will do. But generally speaking, we train our people to understand the titles that they're selling. So we have designers working in the bookstore. We have Black people in the bookstore. We have people from Latinx backgrounds in the bookstore.
Hmm.
So it's it's a combination of things. The community is pretty intersectional.
Hmm.
So we cover books for queer people. We cover books for trans people. We cover books for white people.
Hmm.
Um, and then Black people, Latinx people, Indigenous people, and basically we also we work hard to find the authors who are writing about indigeneity or about economic theories that are different to the ones that we're in, or that would benefit people differently, or historically, philosophies that historically are written by Indigenous people or people of color and such.
So you have such a distinct way that you present yourself to the world. How did you find your voice? I know a lot of people struggle with that.
I guess I'm lucky. The truth is on my side, I mean,
Oh my God, that's great. Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Yes.
I just I live in reality, and if and I'm confident that I have a decent take on what's going on. So
Mhm.
I just grab hold of it and go forward. The the added benefit of not having to achieve something. Like the added benefit of not being in competition, I think is really helpful, because our investment in the community is one that we just sort of see as reciprocation. Like everybody is in community with each other, so therefore we have less competition, and I suspect that helps us stay on message, if especially if there's a crisis or a catastrophe involved. Us being with the community, with labor, with queer people, with trans people, with intersectional feminists, this is all fairly easy for us because that's who we are as a group of people. And so we're making sure that we're continuously furthering our own education in these areas. And the confidence that I have is also a confidence that like other people that work here have. And it's nice to just be on the right side of shit. So we don't think that we're always right, but we know that we're on the right side of it because we don't have, we're not picking fights with people. We don't have a lot of acrimony out there in the world. We're basically trying to give people tools for liberation, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I love that. Okay, so I'm going to switch gears just a little bit, and I would love to know more about how you created the Black Astronaut Project. This is so intriguing to me. I would love to hear you speak about it.
Cool. I like it too. It needs an update, but I'm not worried about that. We'll get to it. The Black Astronaut Research Project was born out of a conversation with a guy named Stephen Brackett, who, if anybody knows Colorado's kind of essential talent pool, it's built around a couple of really cool things that have happened here. One is called Qthon Record, which used to be called Flowbots.org, which is a musical instruction sort of day camp for young people in high school or high school adjacent young people, and it rewards them for their sort of attendance to school by giving them access to music making tools. Stephen Brackett was a part of that. He was a founder of that, a creator of that, and one of the other places where talent is developed is at the Iliff School of Theology, where we share a mentor whose name was Dr. Vincent Harding. And Stefan and I were doing a NEA arts panel discussion, and afterwards he asked like a really simple question, which I took to heart, that was, what is the narrative of Black people that doesn't include slavery? And I was like, well, the fictional narratives of space travel generally don't include slavery because, everyone's kind of over it. It's like a post-racial identity that everyone has in that space. So maybe that's a cue to us to like keep on going into outer space. So I sat with it for a while, and I love making small projects. I love doing like sort of projects that have bookends. They're very discreet and simple. And basically it was like, okay, let's do a database of all the astronauts, both fictional and non-fictional. So there are only 17 Black astronauts in the history of the planet, like NASA and other space agencies. And the first Black astronaut to go into outer space was not put there by the Americans; they were put there by the Russians. He was an Afro-Caribbean guy, a Cuban astronaut, who was put into space. Like there's all this lore, these great stories about space travel, and so that's been a thing. And then all the fictional ones too, because they all have these elaborate backstories. Like Ice Cube is in a movie called The Ghost of Mars, which is a John Carpenter film, and he plays like a criminal. So now you've not just got a Black astronaut on Mars in the story, but he's also like an incarcerated person on Mars. So that system still exists, like it's strange and it's weird, but there's also Space 1999, there's Planet of the Apes, there's there's of course Lieutenant Uhura from Star Trek. There's a lot of, and there have been 3 Uhuras, so like there's a lot of actors behind those roles, but we talk about the backstory of the person in the screenplay or in the film, and that's what becomes important. But it's a fun project. And it also just, it's an imaginative project, which means that it doesn't need anything from us. It doesn't, the history of it keeps on getting made, and we'll eventually come around to updating it, and it'll be fine. It'll be fun and it'll be interesting.
I love that project so much.
I'm glad. It's a fun one.
Yeah.
It's a little silly, and that's what we need in the world. It's a little bit more silly.
Oh, we need so much more silly.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of 2025 is gearing up to be quite an interesting year.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about this year, and how are you focusing your creativity and your energy?
Yeah, I'm not sure if like my body is attending to the Gregorian calendar, like I'm not sure if like 2025 is the big click over this first. There's a little bit of pressure to respond to that, and certainly to organize my time according to the calendar. But I suppose it's sort of like the cycle begins, or at least my feelings and all sorts of energies change when the election happens. Again with the inauguration, again with last week and this week, So there's all this sort of this energy that's put out there for me to respond to, and I feel like I already know this, So this is where we have already done something interesting, and will continue to do interesting things. It's a big opportunity. It's a big opportunity to show up for our community and show them some resources, or show them the history of this moment, or show them, sort of what this moment might have evolved from, or show them things that might not have been given a lot of attention, so that we could pay attention to them now, change some ideas. It's a big opportunity. As a teacher, I think it's great. As a designer, I'm looking forward to it, because the more serious we get about being in community, the more teaching that happens around how to be together, and that's an exciting dimension of teaching for me. As a Black person, I feel like continuously disappointed, and feel like that Black people actually, let's just say, as a person not struggling in poverty right this moment, I feel like poor people are screwed. And I feel bad about it, and I feel like not enough people are doing enough about that. And we've already put on like some seminars and some meetings talking about neoliberalism, and we're trying to train people, ourselves included, train people away from neoliberal tendencies, things that are sort of individual and self-serving, into things that are much more community focused. So I'm a little disappointed in general, with everyone, including my own attention to some things. But again, it's like, there's so many opportunities to change that. We tend to take the change opportunity more seriously than the shame and the scorn stuff. But you have to have a reason to change. And the reason to change is because other people's children, right?
Yeah.
You have to lean in a little bit harder, or you have to work a little bit harder towards the right thing. And I sense that the reason is other people's children, so we have to start giving a shit about who makes our clothes, or who sweats on our behalf, or where this trash goes, or whatever.
Yes.
And to me, that's all just it's all part of it. The trouble that we have here is that the people who have money are concentrating power as well.
Yeah.
And so, like, those who have no money, or very little money, are about to get squeezed even harder.
True.
That's just the reality. But being squeezed even harder doesn't help you not poison yourself with fast food. It doesn't help you when it comes to dealing with bottled water. Like, your effect on the rest of the planet is generally magnified by a food desert or by some other circumstance that you've been put in. So your desperate action is fuel for the end of the world, sort of thing. So it's really disruptive to our own beliefs about ourselves and whether we believe we deserve or should have clean water, or whether we just think, like a child shouldn't be making our clothes and things like that.
Yeah, I can't agree more with that. That idea of self-worth, it's a big one.
Mm.
It's a
Well,
big one.
it's not self-worth, it's just humanity. it's
Hmm.
it's it's got a lot to do with just like how much other people have to suffer for us to have a life that we don't even want.
Yeah, that's
So, that's the fucked up part of it. I mean,
yes.
really, like nobody wants to eat garbage food, and yet garbage food and garbage wrapping and garbage that comes around your food and microplastics and whatever else is wrong with it. All of that is a life you don't want. And it's also fucking up someone else's life around the planet. So,
Hmm.
like, how is that a good deal?
Yeah.
That's the question, So questioning and even improving some small part of our sort of neoliberal self-identifying I deserve good things, nice things attitude, just questioning a part of that should be able to change us and should be able to bring us into some kind of alignment with community so that we start caring more about other people besides ourselves, people besides our immediate family, things like that. Like, how do we get to that place? Right now we just care about ourselves, and
Hmm.
and that's painful. That's painful to watch, and it's painful to watch people not be able to divest from certain bad behavior and so on and so forth.
Oh, so true. Yes. Speaking of that whole area, um, if you have had a moment of failure or conflict or challenge in your life, um, how has that moment fundamentally changed you as a human or as a designer, both?
It's hard to say if it's failure or not. Like, when my wife died, I had two teenage daughters,
Mhm.
and I had discovered that, in the moment of her death, I was only half a person, and that I had sort of configured my expressions. I've configured my authority, my ideas around life, around being half a person, and my wife would be the other half, and
Mhm.
all of this sort of gender normativeness got instantly challenged because um, I had to be both things to my kids. And I realized exactly how I was doing so little of the work psychologically. I was doing so little of the work emotionally. And so I don't know if it's a failure as much it's been an evolution.
Mhm.
And that evolution has been caused by circumstance.
Mhm.
And sometimes that circumstance could illuminate like what you haven't been doing.
Mhm.
But I don't call my younger life a failure. I just call it sort of, um, you get a new awareness. I wonder what you do with it, that sort of situation. Like, I was in a crisis, I was in a catastrophe, and so a new awareness shows up, and I was able to take that on. So, but I did discover that, like, you can sometimes live your life as half a person, and that's because of all the programming that we get to be just one half of a binary,
Mhm.
or there are other forces besides just sort of the construction of gender, but there's also just normative behavior tends to have these polarizing affects like masculinity and patriarchy are coupled and so on and so forth. And to be honest, like to be a Black person like sort of cloaked in patriarchy is like to still not have the benefits of patriarchy. So you're sort of like, I'm paying the cost for being Black and for being me. I might as well just be like who I think I should be versus be stepping into all these normative behaviors that
Mhm.
are in some ways just like they're not awake. And that's where the punk thing comes back in. Like
Mm.
I was like, oh, scratch,
Yeah.
like I thought I was an alternative thinking person, but really an alternative thinking person wouldn't even wear these labels or wouldn't even care about this and would be expressing all sorts of ideas instead of just these sort of patriarchal normative behaviors that lead to more power and so on and so forth. So I had to give up some things, I had to learn some things, but the net gain is that I have a new awareness and a new clarity about what I should be or what I could be in the world.
Wow, that's very beautiful and very deep. Thank you.
It's fucking weird is what it is. It hasn't actually all been easy either.
uh,
But I do think that I'm at a comfortable place in it where
mhm.
I'm more and more clear about myself. It's a part of that confidence thing. Like I'm confident because it's the truth.
Mhm.
So therefore, what else is there to be confident about? Um, but I think that, like having kids and being in that responsibility, I thought I understood what the responsibility was, and I'm still learning, but sometimes you just get shocked about how you acknowledge or understand what that job is as
Mhm.
parent or what that job is as it comes down to transmitting love and care to another person. You're like, ah, shit, like I don't have the tools. Make the tools, get the tools. So, yeah.
Yes, life. It's true. Okay, so I'm going to switch gears one more time.
Go ahead. Go
Um, so you have this amazing radio show called
ahead.
Designed to Kill on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Mountain Time. You
Sure.
play a lot of punk and post-punk. Um, I'm curious, how do you develop your playlists?
Every Monday I do research. Every Tuesday I play the tunes. I mean, it's sometimes the research just shows up in the algorithm.
Mm.
Sometimes I have to go and scroll in Instagram, look for bands,
Mm-hmm.
who's opening up for who, are they
Mm-hmm.
any good?
Mm-hmm.
Usually that's the best place to look for um, new music. Is like if they've hit the road in support of another act that you like, then maybe that's a act that you want to check out. And then if you can get ahead of it,
Mm-hmm.
meaning if they're just on their regional tour, like where they live, if you can get ahead of it, then you might be able to see them in a really small venue in the States when they get here, stuff like that. So I mean, I do a decent amount of music research, and I've been DJing since I was 17. So
Wow.
I don't plan on giving it up. I have recorded most of those shows, but I don't give out the recordings. I just kind of clean them up and put them on cassettes and then give
Mm.
them, and I'm giving a few to my local bar because I have a cassette deck that they like to put on. But mixtapes, it's basically just a long mixtape with a little bit of back announcing built into it. But I'm glad you like it.
I do.
I enjoy doing it. Sometimes I don't say a word. Like yesterday I didn't say a single word the whole show, but
Mm-hmm.
I still played the playlist live, and I thought about jumping on and saying something, but I don't think anything I would say would be soothing because there's so many people whose lives are being turned upside down right now. Like having a DJ say everything will be all right is kind of bullshit because I don't know that to be objectively true. But
Mm-hmm.
also, like, shut up and play the hits.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What are your top two favorite albums?
Oh, if we're in album rock again or album classifications right now, let's see. Hold on. Um, Well, yesterday, I was playing some old stuff, old stuff, old stuff, old stuff, old stuff, old stuff, really old stuff, really old stuff. Oh, this so so there is this new band called the current band called Get Down Services,
Mm.
and they've got an album called Crisps,
Uh-huh.
which tells you that they're British.
Right.
And it's really it's really good.
Mm.
I did fall in love with I fell in love with Tune Yards over the last 10
Mm-hmm.
years.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also fell in love with a band called um what is it called? Yard Act. Yard
Mm.
Act has this record called The Overload. And when that came out in 2023, I was all over it. And then I got to see them in this tiny little club in Philadelphia while I
Mm-hmm.
was doing a layover on the way to like Italy or something. And so I was like, I bought my sister a ticket, her wife, and then also myself. And I was like, cool, I'm spending the night in Philly. We're going to a show. I have to get up in the morning and make my way from Philadelphia to JFK. They're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you know. And so and so that's what we did. And it was a great, great, great show, you know. And they were headlining, so it was a really small venue, but um yeah, so I love that record from 2023.
Mm-hmm.
I also have gotten into a good amount of tune yards. I also am a
Mm-hmm.
huge Gary Wilson fan, but Gary Wilson doesn't play out very often. Um, oh, and there's a new album that Jason turned me onto called Warriors.
Mm.
It's kind of a nouveau soundtrack to the original Warriors film, the gang film in New York City, but it's
Oh.
all done by women. So it's a really powerful, it's really quite good. It's really quite
Wow.
good. Yeah. And then there's some jazz stuff that I've been getting into, like We Insist is a Max Roach, Abby Lincoln
Mm.
record that's really
Mm-hmm.
good
Mm-hmm.
from the 60s. Um, yeah. So I mean, I got stuff all over the map that I listen to, but there's usually some jazz, some punk, some soul, you know,
Mm-hmm.
something interesting. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. If you haven't checked out Design to Kill Tuesdays at 4 p.m., you have to check it out. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So I also am curious about your teaching background. Um, as you're teaching students right now, how do you talk about the future with them? There's so much in flux in design and in the creative industry in general. Um, I mean, how do you see a future in design?
Oh, yeah, most certainly. I see the future of design in much the same way I've experienced it myself. Like I always thought that there was work for designers in the field
Hmm.
of biology or in the field of physics or in the field of chemistry or
Hmm.
in the field of history. I mean, I just think that the work that we're supposed to be doing is the work that doesn't pay that great. It's not like working for Nike
Yeah.
or whatever. It's just we're supposed to be shoring up the work that educators need us to do to make
Mm.
sure that education stays strong or that stories continue to get told. We're supposed to be doing more book design, more sort of teaching in the historical trenches, if you will, with
Right.
design. So I think there's plenty of work to be done by designers. I don't think that cause-based or nonprofit design is really a thing anymore. I don't worry
Hmm.
about that. Like
Hmm.
they're all businesses. um, but I do think that teaching for very particular fields, in
Hmm.
particularly science-based fields, is really good.
Hmm.
Um, you know, like Stefan Bucher,
Hmm.
who's a pretty darn good designer. He's
Hmm.
done some stuff with science and with JPL, and I
Hmm.
think that like organizations like that and work like that is important
Hmm.
because Nike has enough designers
Hmm.
and and so does Amazon, and
Mm-hmm.
like we give them so much of our labor, and they're the main buyers of our labor. But really, I think that designers in education is a perfect place for a bunch of designers to go and to do their best work and to shore up the future of education or the future of science or the future of history telling and so on and so forth. So I hope that people take me up on that and make a future that they can enjoy. But just in case they sell out for the sneakers, okay, so be it. You can't eat sneakers, but sure,
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm hoping that people see that opportunity. Lots of designers, from the designers that we, in quotes, stylistically worship, or whatever that means, lots of those designers also taught and also brought clarity to a lot of educational concepts and ideas and participated in education, so it's not very far-fetched for us at all. I just think that we've been kind of tugged or pulled in this super capitalistic direction for a long time, and we've been made a tool of industry. So most people see themselves as a tool of industry. I see myself as someone that works for the people, and the work I do is generally for the proletariat, for the people. So I'm okay having a modest life. I'm okay doing graphic design at this scale. I'm okay, like, creating a commentary about that. And I want to encourage people to improve the place that they live, like, you know what's really interesting, Heather? I have to be honest with you. We live in a really strange time, and I'll tell you why. Because the best idea still has to compete.
True.
We have to market the shit out of the very best idea that's out there. So being kind to each other, that's a marketing opportunity. You get that? Like be a good person is a marketing opportunity. And we have to be sold that. So it's so weird that we have to be really, really competitive with the best possible ideas. Like, education is good for you. Education is transformative. That's a marketing opportunity. No one automatically believes that anymore. It's certainly not enough people to make it work. Right? Because all these people in education are like, we're in crisis. There's like, there's a enrollment cliff, and there's all of this demographic cliff stuff, and it's difficult, right? But it's the best idea out there is to learn shit. To learn the history of your circumstance is quite possibly the best idea out there, but people still have to be sold it. So that's weird to me. So I would like to live in a world where we don't have to sell the best ideas, like don't pollute, don't litter, like be kind to each other. Let people learn what they want to learn. Let them follow their curiosity. Let them call themselves what they want to fucking call themselves. Like how are these ideas like marketing ops instead of real good ideas that we just say, you know what? That's an objectively good idea. We should just do that. So as long as people are doing the wrong thing, I guess graphic designers can go ahead and call the future the marketing of the best idea against the worst idea, or against no ideas, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's something that bothers me quite a bit. Kindness is its own reward, I think was a saying a long time ago.
Market it. Put it on a t-shirt. Fuck.
Oh, Rick, it's true.
I'm not cynical either. I mean, it's just a fact. I'm not cynical about it. I'm just like, geez Louise, like, we got to compete with the best ideas. That's so weird. The best ideas should just win. They should just be best ideas. That's it.
Yeah, agreed.
Like pro-choice. What the hell's wrong with choice?
I know.
What's wrong with choice? Nothing at all. Self-determination, nothing at all. Agency, nothing at all. But yet you've got to compete. You've got to sell it.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Well then sell it. then would you just get on the job and sell it, please?
Uh,
I'm already converted, but I'm sure as it turns out, there's some people that also need to figure that out. So will you please just sell the shit out of it? There's a future for graphic design. It's continuing to sell the best ideas.
oh my God.
Hope
It's
everyone
true.
shows up for work today.
oh, oh my God. It's true. It's true. It's true. Okay. So given all that,
Yeah, sure.
the next the next 2 years, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where it feels like a lot of the structures are going to fall or change. A lot is being disrupted. Where do you see yourself in 2 years?
I'm not sure. I mean, the projects that we have going are cool projects. Like, so it's nice to own a bookstore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think people will still be reading books.
Mm-hmm.
This year, I'm doing an antiquarian fellowship. I think I am. I've applied at least. And so I'll be going to school for like learning about old books, which is
Oh,
good.
wow. Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, um, I mean, I'm doing a bunch of teaching that is for people who teach other people. So
Mm.
I'm zooming out in the world of education, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
interested
Mm-hmm.
in teaching people how to hold space um for a role as a teacher in the
Mm-hmm.
world. So it's based on a number of different ideas, but most importantly, to lean into sort of compassionate abiding in as a classroom practice, and autoethnography as a classroom practice, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Things
Mm-hmm.
things that are things individual things that have proven to be important, that are not about teaching, but they are foundational to the teaching experience for both parties, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not the subject matter, but it's the humanity part of it. And I feel like subject matter stuff, um I mean, my experience with teaching recently has been give everybody the taste that is right for their palate and let them go. I think
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
I'm teaching design history for Texas A&M, or at least I did last semester, and it was really important for me that the grad students had a taste of something that would just blow their minds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Each of them found one thing that would blow their minds, and that was important for me. And
Mm-hmm.
then the undergrad students getting a vocabulary for this
Mm.
experience called design, and for the history of design in 20th century, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a couple of different objectives, but I find myself like I'd love to work less, but right now I'm working a lot, and uh, I feel like I want to be fully staffed and be able to go back into the thinking space and the learning space instead of the doing space, because I do spend equal times in a year, both learning, teaching, and making.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd love to have a year in 2 years of just teaching, or just making, or
Mm-hmm.
just learning,
Mm-hmm.
like one
Mm-hmm.
whole year of that would probably make me pretty happy.
That sounds amazing.
It could be.
So what books are you reading right now?
I just got, can you hear the sirens in the background?
Uh-uh.
Okay, there's tons of sirens in the background right now. I just got about 700 books from an architect who was closing up his office. And he had an amazing architectural library, but he also had a philosophy library.
Mm.
So I pulled out a book by Gandhi that's called
Mm.
My Religion. And
Mm.
I was reading on Gandhi's assessment of Buddhism, Gandhi's assessment of Catholicism,
Oh, wow.
just because, you know, uh, as a Hindu person, Gandhi isn't against caste, but he was he was a pro-caste liberation figure,
Mhm.
and I'm very interested in what the post-caste or what the anti-caste um, liberation conversation is about. I've been
Mm.
fascinated because I recently found out that my family that's from Southeast Asia wasn't from a part of Southeast Asia that I thought they were from, and that they are from a different part of Southeast Asia. And so I'm just going into more research about like what my family's experience was in India, which is where they're
Mm.
from. So, you
Oh,
know,
wow.
yeah.
That's really cool.
It is fun. I mean, reading for pleasure in the nonfiction space is really fun, for sure.
Hmm. I love that too. All right. So we are just about at time right now.
Cool.
Um, I'm going to open this up for Q&A. You can either drop a question in the chat if you like, and I'll quickly look through here in case there have been some, or you're
Okay.
welcome to turn on your camera if you'd like to speak with Rick directly. Let me just see. Yeah. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, I had one from Devron asking what your two favorite punk albums are.
The best album of all time is Entertainment by Gang of Four. And then a favorite other punk record, boy, oh boy. Um, really a big fan uh, of Magazine, Howard Devoto's band, or gosh, I mean, uh, there's so many good records. There's so many good records. Like Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables is a great record. You know, there's a compilation from Maximum Rock and Roll in the 80s called Peace. That was an amazing introduction to like 50 punk bands around the country. That has to be one of my favorite records. Um, I think mail order records from the 1980s was really like an amazing experience. So my best friend at the time, Ken, he he would buy stuff mail order. He had a lot more money than me, or he had, more stable life than me at the time. Um, but yeah, he would buy stuff mail order and just like we would play them until the grooves wore out. It was really great. So yeah.
Uh, he also asks if you had a whole year for teaching, what
Mm.
specifically would you teach, and what message would you want your students to take away from the experience?
Right now, I'm really interested in teaching people how to be uh, how to be a teacher, like sort
Hmm.
of the levers and the pulleys of teaching itself as a practice. And uh, so what we're calling some of the workshops I'm doing this year, we're calling professional development for teachers, and that's cool. I think what I want people to learn is just how their own confidence is available to them.
Hmm.
They simply have to care enough about the way that the confidence that they have works as a tool to help young people. Like,
Hmm.
if you don't care about confidence for your own purpose,
Hmm.
that's fine. But caring about confidence because other people need you to be confident in the work that you're doing,
Hmm.
that's actually a whole nother dimension of a reason to be confident and a reason to be honest with yourself and a reason to evolve, is that other people's lives get affected by that.
Hmm.
And if I can help people get closer to that experience, I think that that would be amazing, you know?
Hmm.
Like I feel that would be just amazing if people just they arrived at their confident place because they needed to, not
Hmm.
for themselves, but for others.
Beautiful. I've got one more question here from Hannah. Given that we have to, quote, market kindness, what are the ways that you feel you can grow a community and instill the value of kindness?
Um, so my feeling is that like you can definitely you can definitely like tell people but showing them by a series of connected action is so much more useful. So in our store, which is devoted to being a store, we also have a small locals only nonfiction library.
Mm-hmm.
So if you need to borrow a book and it's in our library, you get to borrow the book. That's free.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have prints that are our graphic design product, the stuff that we make. We have prints that are pay what you can afford, And so, and then we have workshops that are like, no one is turned away for lack of funds. So, behaving in a consistent way that just doesn't prioritize money is one of the ways that you can make room for a concept like kindness. Giving other people a chance. Recently, we've been doing this, giving other people a chance to participate in that by buying a ticket to an event for a scholarship ticket. That's one of the ways that we let our community also participate in that kindness. So people know that there's usually scholarship tickets available, and they can call and say, hey, is there a scholarship ticket available for this event? We're like, yes, there is. Come on down. So being kind, not prioritizing money, is part of being against your own neoliberal tendency. Then giving other people a template for that kindness and giving them an opportunity to do that too is a way of sharing that like possibility or opportunity. And then not making a big fucking deal about it and doing it all the time, repeating it, making it a way of life, trusting that people will pay what they can afford and they will buy stuff. That's pretty cool. So all of those things put together feels to me like a program or a way of being that promotes something other than the money that's being transacted upon. But does it immediately promote kindness? I don't know, but we think it's a good idea, and we think that kindness is a good idea, and hopefully there's a little bit of overlap. But I think kindness is something that people sense and feel. So, and I can't speak for their experience. I just know what I'm trying to create, So
I love that. All right. Do we have any other questions? Oh, she says, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Hannah.
All right. So unless we have any other questions, we are at the end of our time. Rick, before we close, how can people find you? Do you have any projects that you would like people to be aware of?
Yeah, if you're in New York on the 21st of February, I've been asked to talk at the Museum of Modern Art about their latest exhibition called Pirouette, Turning Points in Design. And I have the letter D for good design, well, G for good design, rather. So I'll be talking a little bit about design ethics and talking about good design in quotes. And then I'm here, I think I'm at CalArts in April. I'm just going to be around. You can follow me on Instagram. It's the best way to find me. For now, maybe I'll shift off to Blue Sky. I'm not a perfect person, and I don't even do Instagram that well. So learning new ways to be in new products just sounds like a nightmare to me, to be honest. But again, like sometimes we have to do the right thing because, it's the right fucking thing, So yeah, I'm easy to find though. Just have to Google me and look for the guy with the silly hair.
Thank you so much, Rick. It is such a pleasure to speak with you again. Thank you for giving us your time and your expertise.
For sure.
Best wishes for 2025, and hope we talk again soon.
Yeah, back at you. Thank you so much.